Good evening, everyone. Hi. Welcome to another evening of MFA Fine Arts Talks. It's great to see so many familiar faces in the audience. So tonight I'm very happy to introduce Tsibi Geva, who I met through his daughter, Michal, who happens to be in the front row and who graduated from our program recently, along with Luz and Amalia Murad and Sivan Dayan. So we have a bunch of alums in the audience. It's really nice to see people back, even higher. Okay, thank you. Tsibi Geva is one of Israel's most prominent and influential living artists. And even though I cribbed that from his bio, it's true. His work is very, very important. Both within Israel and internationally. The work itself has an extensive range, from loose, abstract paintings to... Thanks for joining us. Eli Barak, class of 2016? Yeah, anyhow. From paintings to installations and assemblage pieces put together with industrial and found materials. Born in Kibbutz Ein Shemer in Israel, Tsibi is not strictly a political artist, although both his paintings and his installations are concerned with political and cultural questions of locality and immigration, hybrid identity, and existential anxiety in an age of uncertainty. I think you guys all know what I mean. Existential anxiety in an age of instability. An influential member of the Israeli art scene since the 1980s, Tsibi lives and works between Tel Aviv and New York. We're very lucky to have him here in New York each fall. His work has been exhibited at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, at ICA Boston, the Tel Aviv Museum, the Haifa Museum, and Macro Testaccio in Rome, among many other museums, galleries, and other kinds of institutions. He recently represented Israel in the Venice Biennale in 2015 in the Israeli Pavilion. His works are included in many major public and private collections, including MoMA, the Jewish Museum, both in New York, and the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. He's received numerous awards and grants, including a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Israeli Ministry of Culture. He studied at the Art Teachers Training College in Ramat HaSharon, Israel, and also at the New York Studio School. He's a professor, kind of professor emeritus, at the University of Haifa and Hamid Rasha School of Art. So you're technically still on faculty, but no longer teaching in those places? Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. And last year, we were very happy to welcome him to our faculty here in the MFA Fine Arts Department at SVA. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Tsibi Geva.
I like to start with just a short introduction about myself, about my life. Mark speak about it a little bit. I born in Israel in Kibbutz. I hope you heard about Kibbutz, what is about. And I grew up there, and until I've been about 28, 29 years old. And then I moved to New York to study in New York. I studied before in Israel, and then I studied in New York in New York Studio School, which is a small school in 8th Street. And I started my career when I finished my studies in Israel. That was my first show was in '79, and from then I show all over. I mean, a lot in Israel, outside of Israel, United States, in New York. I was represented in New York from 1990 by the gallery, very famous gallery, Anina Nozei Gallery. I showed with her many times until 2006. Then she closed the gallery. And from then I did many shows all over. I had a traveling show which started in American University Museum in Washington, and moved to Macro Testaccio in Rome, and then to Mönchenhaus Goslar, Germany. And at the same time, I got to represent Israel. I selected to represent Israel in the Venice Biennale, which is maybe the most important show in the world. And isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of show that, I mean, but it's not the time to speak about, but I will show you, I'll make a presentation of this project. I prepare it, I work on it about a year, and the show was in 2015, about 2 years ago. And so the installation that was there, I see it as one of the most important art projects that I created, and I like to start with it. So I show you first this installation, which I see it as it's kind of like holistic installation, site-specific, and work that include many motifs from the iconography and the images that I dealt with in the past. It was site-specific, it was combination of three-dimensional elements and paintings and other things, you will see it. My plan for today is very intense. I like to show more than to speak. I like to show you a lot because I think that that's the way to get idea about what you are doing. So I will start with this project, and then I move to other installation that I created in the past, which all was kind of base for the Biennale piece. And then I'll move to my paintings, and I'll show few early paintings and then the late paintings from the last few years, which part of them I show in Albert's Benda Gallery right now. So that's in general what I plan for tonight. I will be very happy if you disturb me, and make questions and whatever, so it can be very casual. And so please ask if you want, and just, let's be spontaneous about it. Just a moment. I just like to say from the beginning that I am this kind of artist. I work with different mediums. I'm a painter, at the same time I'm doing installation stuff. I work with found objects, so that kind of complexity, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand the relationships between all those things. They affect each other, and there are many complex relationships between the things on the formal level and on the contact level. So that's why I want to make all this, all this turn in or presentation of all those pieces. I think that in general, and that's important to understand about my works, because sometimes people ask how this relate to this and how this relate to this, is to look on it like kind of polyphonic way of process or working. Sometimes I understand myself in the retro. I mean, after I'm doing something, because I develop few things in same time, in parallel, and then I make connections between them. And so there are always like a few things around, and that's exactly what I did, for example, the project of the Biennale, aside of my painting show, which travel in same time in museums all over Europe. So that's in general, and also one more thing which maybe will be helpful. I just took one sentence that one of the most important writers wrote from many years ago about my works, and I like to put it on the table just to have it as like a point of reference for what I'm doing. And he said that, I try to translate it, he said that my work is kind of mapping of disputed or conflicted Israeli national subjectivity or conscience. Mapping of conflicted Israeli conscience. And that's how he described what I'm doing. And as I will try to show now is how I built my works and how I use the ready-made objects or found objects from the streets of Israel, and how I try to characterize. It's more characterized than to symbolize, but to characterize my environment, the place where I live. So that's kind of, just point of view on what I'm doing, and for me it was important to say it. In general, and that's the last thing before I start to show, I don't like to interpret it a lot what I'm doing. I like more to speak differently. I mean, to give information, to tell you about the connections to the life, and to bring examples, and then make it more understandable what I'm showing. So I hope it will work. And okay, let's start. Okay. I'm showing the Israeli Pavilion in Venice. By the way, just a few words about the Venice Biennale. The Venice Biennale is one of the biggest shows in the world, aside of the Documenta and other big show. The thing is, the Venice Biennale, which exists about 100 years, by the way, Venice Biennale based on national principle. I mean, it still works. There are national pavilions. The Israeli one is about 5 meters from the American one, and there is a British one and the French and whatever. So there are about, I think, 150 different countries who built their pavilions in the Giardini. The Giardini is big park, and each country choose her own artist or representative for the specific years. It's happened once in 2 years. In between, there is a Biennale of Architecture Biennale. And so there is no central curatorial for the Biennale. There is a central show, of course, aside of those shows, so it's run together. But the principle of every country choose their own artist that's the principle of the Biennale, and it still continue even so. There is a conversation, a very tough conversation about the nationality as principle, and about how it's like, how valid is it in the situation right now in the world, but that's another thing. But it still exists. So this is the Israeli Pavilion. By the way, it's built about 63 years ago, so at the beginning of the 50s, and it's very uncomfortable pavilion, and that's one of the reasons when I got it and when I chosen to do it, I had I was very busy to find what can I do in this kind of pavilion, which is very uncomfortable. How can I maximize the limitations of the space, because the space is very difficult. So I'll show you what I created here. This is a building from other side. You can see it. It's about 7 meters high, and it's about 23, 24 meters long. And here you can see I decided to cover the whole building and to create like two shows. I mean, first to relate to the whole building, the whole pavilion as big, huge sculpture in the garden, which seen from far away. So it's functioned like something very big in the middle, like big sculpture. And then whenever you come in, you see the other works and how it's combined to how the inside combine and relate to the to outside. So here you see, sorry. This is, by the way, the American Pavilion. There are more than 1,000 used tires that I brought from Israel. By the way, I brought all the materials from Israel until the last screw. And all the tools and everything I brought from Israel, because for me it was very important to characterize, to bring the cultural smell of this specific area. So by the way, what I did here, I just covered the building with, I blocked the spaces with gray blocks, you can see it. And I created kind of like bunker or shelter or something like that. I changed it and transformed the whole building from outside. And it's totally transformed. I used to tie the tires, I use plastic ties and other materials. And the tires, by the way, are not same. They are close, I mean, in the dimension. They are not really exactly same, which create many places to improvise and to put other materials, which was very important to me. For me, it was very important to create something which, in terms of architecture, it's work on system, and at the same time, it's break the system all the time. In architecture, there is a spacious section which called Vernacular Architecture. It's architecture without architects. By the way, it's based on a show that was in the 60s in the MoMA, which called Architecture Without Architects. And it's related to all those places in the world that people build things without even plan it. And they built on bricular principle. I mean, you built with those objects that you found. And so I tried to somehow to work in this kind of system. That's the enter, you saw the enter, and then you come in, and here I created this wall, and you can see the window, you will see it after, the window that you can see the inside of the outside, I mean the inside of the cover of the tires. And here I cover a space which originally, that was the facade of the pavilion. I mean, it was two glass walls here, which usually it's open to the garden, and you can look from inside to outside and vice versa. And here, because I closed it, I created a space, and I create what we called boydem. Boydem is kind of storage. Usually, it's a Yiddish word. That's a place where people used to throw their, things like suitcases and other things that they don't need. They put it there, so it's kind of like storage. I brought all those elements from Israel, and you can see another view of it. I brought all the objects from Israel, and I collect them in manses in the street, and then include the old tools that we use to build the whole installation. So the installation include the tools that create it, and you can see many things here. You can see also a video that work here, which show another project of lattices that I create before, and we'll see it later. And that's run in few places in the pavilion. By the way, I had a visit of the president of the Biennale, Mr. Barretta. That's an Italian old guy. He came to visit my show, and I asked to guide him. And he looked on this, and he said, it's collective unconscious. He said it immediately, so I felt that he catch the idea. You can see it. And here there are two big paintings. One is this. Those paintings are from 2012. And the other piece is this, which shown now in Albert's Benda Gallery. It's one of the biggest piece. And take a look.
How big?
How big? Yeah. It's 2 meters high and 430 wide. Triptych, yeah. Now, here we move to the second floor. There is a piece here. You can see the title Gaza. Gaza, you know where is Gaza. Gaza is territory close to Israel. We have many things with Gaza. I mean, it's part of the reality in Israel. So this piece is kind of like in between. It's found object that I just paint on it, and there is a motif of the keffiyeh on the top. I will talk about more later. This is the middle floor. Here you can see the lattices. Those lattices I built. I hope that you understand what is lattices. It's not very usual here in New York. I mean, there are different kind of lattices. In Israel, you can see it all over, in any place. Usually, it's kind of triangle. It's cover windows to defend the house, but it's going outside like this, and it's going to the street. And people used to throw things that they don't need to the lattices. You'll see after another piece that relate to it. And so here it's exactly opposite. It's going to the inside of the space, so it creates kind of cage, like closed cage. And by the way, look on the pattern. Each lattice is different pattern. This tree is kind of like relation. I mean, it's kind of quotation of Sol LeWitt, the important minimalist artist who died a few years ago. And that's the base of horizontal, vertical, 45-degree, whatever, and then it comes to the grid and whatever. Yeah, another view. This piece is a very big piece. It's 2 walls covered by shutters. The shutters are very typical in Israel. Most of them are kind of, it's combination of plastic and aluminum, and there are many other materials here, like metal, like wood, canvases, and other things, but mostly shutters. Usually it's remind facade of buildings in Tel Aviv or other places in Israel, which is just improvised by people. I mean, they just close their houses, but here it's inside, and it's a big piece. I did it with 64 pieces that I just found in the street, and I bought. It was a very complex puzzle to build it and to cover and to be exact in the space of the pavilion. Here it's a view from the 3rd floor of the pavilion, and you can see a few other views of this piece. Wonderland, of course, it's related to Lewis Carroll, Alice in the Wonderland, but it's very ironic politically. I mean, it's only the word Wonderland, and it's a piece that I created and put inside the work. This is another version of the storage that is shown down, the Boydem. That's related to what I spoke before. I have to explain it because it's in Israel, you see it all over. I mean, people throw things that they don't need. They don't throw it to the garbage. I mean, it's like in between. I mean, I put it there like old TV that doesn't work, or like bicycle of the kid, or whatever, or mattress. And I just keep it. So it's outside of the private space, and it's go to the public space. It's you can see it from the street. But that's the way it's in between, and somehow it's touched the Jewish complex about keeping everything, post-Holocaust complex, like to keep everything and to have a storage, and maybe once we need it. So I create this piece. It's 4 lattices. It's about 11 meter long. You can see it. And it's full of things which combined together include the video that run all over all the time there. Here you can see details. This, for example, the lattice relate to Mondrian composition number 6. It's taken exactly, it's kind of quotation of Mondrian. People don't know it, but that's what it is. As same as this piece, for example, which relate to a specific Jasper Johns painting from the era of the cross-etching of his paintings. So each one of the patterns of the lattices relate both, it's kind of cross between the high tradition of the modernism and same as like popular version that you can see all over in the streets in Israel. Here you see how it's relate to each other. And those are 2 big paintings. This is one of them. You see that every motif you saw downstairs, the wall, the wall of the gray blocks. So you can see here it's painted on canvas. It's 4 canvases. By the way, I did them in different times, and I just combined them for the Biennale. One of them I did because sometimes I relate to my works, my old works as ready-made objects, and I use them again in different contexts. For example, the one on the left, at the upper left, is from '92. The one down there in the right side is from 2002, and the upper right is just ready-made. It's kind of like present, how it called, canvas that I found in the street. It was a sign. This is another piece which built by 6 canvases together. You can see the bird here. It's written black bird. By the way, there is relation to it in the show now in the gallery. And here you can see how it's combined. And there is another work which relate to the stairs. And you can see the window here. And how you can see, this is the other work. It's triptych, is 360 centimeter high. Yeah, that's a space. So that's the upper space, and you can see how it all relate to each other, even so that they are different. This is the window which was there. I opened this window and I cover it from outside by the tires, so you can have some looks about this. That's from inside to outside, and here is from outside to inside. Then if we go outside, the old building, you can move around. This is the backyard. And so you can see that's the backyard, and you can see the window here. Of course, I can speak about it, few hours, but I'm just doing it. I just want to give you an idea about this project. Here you can see the window, and you can see the paintings inside. So the all work relate to inside, outside. It's all the time a play between inside to outside, and So it have to work together. That's again the outside. And I moved to just few images of what I call vernacular architecture. For example, that's taken in Shchunat Shapira in Tel Aviv. That's in south of Tel Aviv. It just you can see how people are living. This is, by the way, it's one of my installations that I created in 1995. I found this space, which was old cinema hall in Mitzpe Ramon. That's in the south of Israel, in the desert. And after it was a horse stable, and then it was empty. And it was a big event of artists from all over the world, and I invited to create a show there. So I found this place. I like them to keep it as it is. And I painted this element of the kefia, which you'll see later, on the direct on the wall. That wall was, in the past, was the screen of the cinema. By the way, it's written there, we shall not move from the Golan Heights. Rabin cheated, he betrayed his wife. Rabin was the prime minister who killed in Tel Aviv in 95. By the way, he killed 5 months after I created this show, this work. I found it as it is with the graffiti, which was, to me, it just shocked me when I saw it. I can repeat on it. We shall not move from the Golan Heights. It was then Rabin make a discussion with Assad, the president of Syria, about the Golan Heights, which dominated by Israel now, occupied in the 67 war. And so it was a many demonstration in Israel against it. And so they connect it, and it's called "We Shall Not Move from the Golan Heights." Rabin is cheated. He betrayed his wife, and so they created they put it with a story about Bibi Netanyahu then. But anyway, so it was kind of like very, how to say, popular small poem, like the unconscious. Of the right people from Israel. And so I kept it as it is, and I painted the kefia motif on the wall. And you'll see this is another version that I created in other building of the kefia motif. You'll see it in different places. This is Bedouin place, which is very vernacular. That's the way how they build, they create their homes, and it affects very much. It affects my art because I think it's something very typical in it and in the vernacular way of building, which is very, very essential to Israel in general. Maybe I'll speak about it later. I'm showing you the first installation that I created in Jerusalem in '99 with tires. Here, by the way, I did it in Jerusalem under the big stadium, Teddy Stadium. This was only 2 walls, but I painted on the walls, and I combined with Arabic friend, calligrapher who live in Akko, inside Israel. He was a friend of mine, Khair Foudi, and we make the drawings together. The old drawings full with text in Arabic. It's all phrases, very popular phrases, or quotations from the Quran or from Arabic poetry. And we paint together, and I paint and he wrote, and vice versa. And we create the work together. Yeah, another version of the tires. I just show you a few places that I made the tires. In all those projects, it was inside. It was site-specific inside. This piece I made in 2001 at Anina Nozei Gallery. That's open exactly a week after the 9/11. I started to create it before the 9/11, and we started to work on it. And in the middle of the installation, I was in the street and I saw the planes crash to the buildings, to the Twin Towers. This was very shocking, but I prepared the show before, and I stuck with this show because it was like, you maybe remember, I don't know if you have been around, but the show relates somehow a lot from, the basic ideas of the show was very much somehow connect to the things, but nobody saw it. I mean, it was like, it's open about a week after. By the way, the title of the show was Days of Awe. Days of Awe, I just met yesterday with Anina Nozei, my ex-gallerist, and we spoke about it. And she said to me, you know, Days of Awe, how do you know to give this title to the show? And I gave this title about 2 months before, and we made invitations and we sent it to people. And Days of Awe is the time in the Judaism between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And in Hebrew, it's much better in terms of, in Hebrew, there are more connotation. Days of Awe is Hayamim Hanoraim, is like terrible days. And so I did it because the show was exactly in the Days of Awe, in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and she asked me about titles, so I said to her, okay, it will be Days of Awe or Hayamim Hanoraim, terrible days. And then it really was terrible days, and so it was very difficult to finish the installation and to create it, and then it was open. This piece is done on rubber, black rubber, and acrylic paint. And this is the other room with installation of black birds. You'll see the birds after, but here are just examples of many pieces that I'm doing. The blacks are always, in my paintings, are always kind of stuffed bird. They are standing, they never flying, they're mostly black. They're looking outside, it's kind of like witnesses. I'm doing then the birds as lonely, like a single image in each piece. But when I put it in this way, when I make installation of many birds, it became a group of birds, like you can see, for example, in the Hitchcock film, which called Birds. If you look to the sky and you see a group of black birds, you know that somebody died on the earth. And that symbolizes kind of death, and I relate to it. And so that was, the whole second room was full of those pieces. This place is in the middle of Yafo. Yafo is part of Tel Aviv, it's the oldest part of Tel Aviv. It's this part which mix of Jewish and Arabic population. This building is full of Arabic families. I made a show up there. You see the balcony. This was a small gallery, which called the Gar Gallery, which represent mostly Palestinian artists. I was the first Jewish Israeli who invited to make a show there. The curator was ex-student of mine, and she asked me to make installation. So I create this piece exactly specific for a size specific to the spaces here. You can see how it's looked from outside, and now inside there are 4 rooms, and then there is a balcony. So I started, and I create the first lattices here. It's iron lattices. You can see the principle of solid width here, like vertical, horizontal, and then you see 45 degree and 45 degree, and then you see the other room with 2 kinds of grid. So I relate a lot to this tradition, and I changed the pattern of each one. Here you see this piece in the other room, and here, when you move outside, you cover by lattices. For example, this one on the left side is and it relates to my Kefia painting, which I started to do in 1988. So this show was in 2002, and I create each piece exactly for the space. So you can see, when you move inside this balcony, you can see Yafo from the fourth floor to down, and it's very, very interesting how the patterns are transparent, or how they divide or make kind of like interpretation to the landscape. Each point of view is different. You can see different things. You can see here a church, and you can see an alarm there. So the whole history of Israel, you can see through this and through the pattern of the kefia in this example. Yeah, you can see here that's a water tower, a very old water tower. That's also related to Mondrian, a specific painting of Mondrian. And you can see, I can speak a lot about it, because for me it was very, very interesting to make a research of the whole history of patterns, the Western patterns and the Eastern patterns, what's the different, and the ornament and the relationships between them. I can't speak about it now, but there is kind of movement between more like regular patterns to the irregular patterns, which are based to my late works in the left side. That's, by the way, it's kind of like a David Star, which you can see in every synagogue in Tel Aviv. Yeah, that's the drawing of the patterns. It's just a very short look. And then we created a video piece out of it. I can't show it now, but that's shots from the video. Now, immediately after this, I got a show in Haifa Museum. It's a very nice museum in Haifa. Haifa is the third biggest city in Israel. The show was built, I called it, by the way, master plan. It's related a lot to architecture and to the works of my father, who was architect. By the way, my father was an architect. We are a family of artists. So I told you that I born in a kibbutz. My father started to build my parents, they came from Poland, from Warsaw, and they built the kibbutz. They came to Israel, they immigrated in the 30s. And then in the 50s, in the beginning of the 50s, my father sent by the kibbutz to Vienna to study architecture. And that was in 52, and I was then a baby. And so he went for about 3-4 years, and then he came back. I didn't know him. And he got a diploma in Vienna, and he was very much influenced by the Bauhaus style. And then he started to work all over Israel and to design buildings all over, all kinds of buildings, include in the Arabic villages inside Israel. So he invited, and I still remember it because I was a kid in the beginning of the 60s, he invited by Arabic people from Kfar Meisar, that was close to the kibbutz where I live, to design a mosque, a Muslim mosque. And he did it, and I think he's the only Jewish in the history who designed Muslim mosque in Arabic village. You have to understand, I tell this story because it says a lot about, I think, about my art. So my father, I used to go with him. I was a small kid, and I just ran with him to any place. So I knew the people. We had friends in the Arabic villages. That was before '67 war. We changed the whole map and on the whole history of Israel and the Middle East. But we have been all over, and I went with him. This guy never touched hummus, for example. He used to eat gefilte fish, if you know what it's about. It's like very Jewish, Ashkenazic food. And so it tells the story about what's going on in Israel. I mean, this kind of like dialogue and at the same time conflict that all around. And somehow I try through my art to to characterize it. So this show in Haifa Museum, there is part with the tires, as you see, and there is another part with the lattices that I built special for the space of the museum. It's very minimal, and it's three-dimensional, of course, but it's play a lot with the history of painting and whatever. I moved to another project with lattices. Here, I use same elements, but in totally different context. That show was in the power station, big old power station in Tel Aviv. I built a wall of about 40-meter sheetrocks, and I created one line of the lattices. It's like one huge line all over. So each show in different places give me opportunity to change or to use elements in totally different way and to say something totally new with sometimes same elements. You can look on this. It's more than 35 meters. And I moved to another show, which I created in 2012. By the way, this was my studio. I moved from there because somebody threw me out, but I've been there about 15 years. Yeah, this was my studio, and I just show it because the show itself, which called transition object. Transition object, you know what is transitional object, it's taken from the psychological, but I use it as the title of the show, and it's related a lot because in the same time that I created this show, I had to move to a new space. And the show, which I work on it about a year, I did it with Yona Fisher, the most important Israeli curator, who is now 85. That was his last show that he curated, and we work on it a long time. We create also a film, a documentary film about this work. In this show, we focus on my dealing with found objects. The show includes 180 objects. 120 was just found objects that I never touched. I used to collect objects in the streets and just to bring them to my studio. Sometimes they are just, it's there. I mean, it stayed there, and somehow when I found something that interests me, many times I don't know the reasons. I feel that something is for me there, and I take it in my car and then I bring it to the studio. So you can see all the bed here, which was in the kibbutz where I born. We used to sleep on this kind of bed, but in the same time, somehow it's referred to the grid. Here you see the Wonderland and other piece. I just show you a few parts of the show because the whole show was combination of ready-made or found objects and objects that I did something with it and created a piece of art out of it. And it was mixed. It was like a big archival of many things together in small rooms. This was in Ashdod Museum. It's a museum which is all very small rooms. And all those pieces are combined together. For example, in the right side is one of the paintings that I created short time after I come to New York to study in '85. And in the middle is just a piece that I found close to Haifa, close to Usafia, which is the Druze village. On the way, what's written there is honey and zatar. Zatar is Arabic thing. And I didn't touch it. Here it's very important what's written here, but I don't want to stick on this. It's written Chof Bat Yam, it's Bat Yam beach. Bat Yam is a small city, as part of Tel Aviv. And Hayam Shel Aza is the Sea of Gaza. The Sea of Gaza, by the way, it's related to two phrases of two important people. One is Yasser Arafat, who said once that we'll throw the old Jews to the sea. And the other was Moshe Shamir, who was the Prime Minister of Israel. He died already. But he said once, the all Arabs are same. And the Arabs are same and the sea is same. So I combined these two phrases and I just put it together. So it's the Sea of Gaza here. This is another version of the Sea of Gaza. One of them is ready-made and the other done by me is glass. I just want to give you example from this show. It was a very big show and I did it in 2012, as I said. Here it's written Haifa, 03. 03 is the beginning of the numbers of Tel Aviv area, and Gaza, which is kind of mapping. This is something that I just found in the street. And that's a David star, and that's the other side, which I created like fence or like a kafia element. This is one example of the kafia paintings. It's very big, it's canvas. And here you see same pattern, but on lattices. Gaza. By the way, this is a found object. Is a plate of table full of sheet of birds. And here it's a sign that I just found. Somebody was standing in the street in Tel Aviv and hold it, and it's written, "Open the heart." And I choose to open the show with this. This is again my studio, the old studio. I'm not there anymore. I have a better studio now in Tel Aviv. And that's retrospective, not really retrospective, but big show that I had in Tel Aviv Museum in 2008-9. It was basically painting show, and I moved to the painting. I just built this structure in the middle. That was the only piece that wasn't painting, and it's all the whole painting. You see it's kind of open structure. Those are 3 kafia paintings. I hope you know what I mean by keffiyeh. Keffiyeh is the Palestinian head cover. But the pattern, I just use the pattern because the pattern is close to, many people use it, many people, you can buy it in New York, many people work with it. I mean, it's became very popular item. But the pattern is, I took the pattern to different territories and different meanings. It's like fence, it's like border, it's like something that block your body to, you can't go ahead, or kind of lattice. Yeah, those, by the way, is other works from the late 90s. This is huge painting, 2.5 meter on 6 meter of the mountains. I had some huge works of mountains, empty landscape, very apocalyptic huge works. And now I move to the painting, which I like to close the circle. I just show you a few examples of the keffiyeh and the terrazzo, which were the main motifs that I did from the end of the 80s to the 90s. In about 6-7 years, I did only keffiyeh and terrazzo painting, which are very local. I did hundreds of paintings of both images, which I see as kind of like negative, positive to each other. This is one of the, it's 2 meter by 2 meter. And this is one of the terrazzo painting. By the way, it's not collage, everything is paint. This is another terrazzo. That piece is still in my studio. That's the only one I still have from this terrazzo. By the way, I think we didn't put it. And then, yeah, terrazzo, for whom don't know what it's about, terrazzo is very typical tiles, which you can see in Israel all over. It's very Mediterranean thing. In New York, when I show first those works in New York in 1990, nobody knew what is keffiyeh and what is terrazzo. Because in United States, you have rugs or you have wooden floor. So this kind of terrazzo, like chips, like it's by the way, it's Italian word, it's Italian term. By the way, we call it in Israel, we call it balata. Balata is Arabic name, and which, I mean, just move into the Hebrew. There are many words that move in between Arabic and the Hebrew. Balata is not only terrazzo tile, it's also a very famous refugees camp in the West Bank. So when I started to make balatas or terrazzo paintings, I relate to both connotations. And so it's very important to know, but people that don't know it just relate to it as abstract painting, you know. And of course, it refers a lot to the paintings. I studied in New York between 65 to 67, and I felt very close to the Neo Geo paintings that just started in New York, like artists like Philip Taft and Peter Halley and Ross Bleckner, who was one of my teachers then, and other. So there is some similarity to this. This is one of the keffiyehs. Another one, those just examples. And now I move to the works that, the group of works which done between 2012 or 11 and until now. I will run on it. A part of them are shown now in the gallery here in New York, in the Chelsea, so you will see, if you go there, you will see them in live, and I recommend, I mean, painting is something that you have to see in person. Anyway, this show was in Macro Testaccio in Rome. It's huge space, so I just show you a few installation shots of the show. You can see those works on the walls. It's more than 1,000 square meter space. And then, so most of the show was combination of new paintings and old paintings from the 80s. And then it's moved to the last room, which was combination of keffiyeh paintings from different times, and the lattices here on the walls, and you can see the relationships between them. Now I just like to run on those works, and then we will move to questions. Yeah, those are works that part of them are here, and many of them not. This, you saw it already. This is a diptych. It's very big. It's here in New York. It's not in the show, but it's in my studio in Greenpoint. It's written Raven on the top. This is one of the pieces that was in the Biennale. This is 2 meters on 150. This one too. This is big diptych. This, for example, it's look like tree, but it's referred to the lattices and the other patterns that you saw before. This piece is now in the gallery. It's a very big piece, built by 4 canvases together. This piece include, you know, the keffiyeh part on the left side, and also shutter that I put inside the canvas. I just cut the canvas and I put a shutter, real shutter inside. So there are many things inside here. This we saw before in the Biennale. This one is here in the show. Most of the works are acrylic, sometimes with oil also. This piece is in the show also in Albert's Benda Gallery. There are many things to speak about in those works. Here, for example, you can see like window with lattice. This piece is in the show. It's more abstract. This is a triptych that you can see in the left side. There is a kind of like terrazzo, but it's falling apart and it's continue in a different way. Yeah, we saw it in the Biennale. This piece is in the show here in New York. This is also. Also this one. This one too. Yeah, and this piece is in the show too. I called it Pieta. You know about the Pieta? There are 3 Pietas of Michelangelo. And in this case, it's Arabic women or men carry wounded or died child. I just want to close in three slides. This show done in 1982, very, very early. It's one of my first shows. And I want to show you, here is the first time that I created those kind of like demonic portraits of the Arab with a cover by the keffiyeh. I said demonic because it's the presentation of presentation. It's not my idea or my interpretation about them, but it's more about kind of graffiti or kind of like how people used to draw on walls and what's the public image which accepted by most of the Israelis. So sometimes I make interpretation. It's kind of like reference, but I did it in 80. I created this installation in 81 and I show it in 82, which was 5 years before the first Intifada started. I don't know if you know about the Intifada. Intifada is the demonstrations of the Palestinian. And this was also before the Lebanon war in Israel. So it was very, very early. In the history of the Israeli art, people didn't want to touch those things this time. So it was very, very somehow, it's accepted like a little bit provocative or maybe controversial. I didn't feel that it's provocative, but I just wanted to put it on the wall and to bring it to the space of the gallery and to open the questions about this image and about how people feel to this, because we see it everywhere in any place. That's the last picture. So that was a holistic installation. That was in 82. And sometimes I just show it because it's very interesting, because some people ask me about the new works, why you started to repaint a human figure, and if it's new in my work. So I said it's not new. I mean, I did it in the past, but I'm doing it now in different way. But it relates to the works of the 80s. Basically, I think that most of the artists don't have to, I mean, you speak, sometimes you tell the same story, but in a totally different way. And so it's kind of like, it's like a spiral way of thinking. I mean, you use some elements, but you use them in totally different way, in different age and different time in your life, and you create different things with them. And I like to finish with this show, just to show it, because for me, it's my first show. It wasn't my first show, but for me, it's very important. I mean, this was a very important point of beginning in my history after I moved to the keffiyeh paintings or whatever, but it's looked totally different. So, and of course, I didn't show you so many things. So you saw only 5% of what I did. So there are many, many sections of, other images and other things that I created in the middle. So, and just maybe to finish, I just wanted to show something that very surprising and very important to me and very personal. I told you the story about our family, which, by the way, my brother is artist too, Avital. He's my oldest brother. He's 11 years older than me. And he just showing in Israel now. And so he's kind of conceptual political artist. And he even represent Israel in the Venice Biennale in 1995. So I did it in 2015. And so we are two brothers, I mean, in the art, but also we have the third generation, Michal, and the son of Avital. And why I tell this story? Because I started to paint very early in my life. And all the time speaking about art, and art in general was in the air in our house. We spoke about it a lot. And so, and my father died in '93, and then I went to just to take things from his office, his studio, which was in city close to the kibbutz. And they asked me to come and to take whatever I want to take. And I just took this book, which called Hagoder. I don't know how to translate it to English, but this book done in the 30s or in the 40s. And it was a commercial book of company who designed lattices, but cement lattices, different one. And I opened this book and I just took it and I found the all patterns that I use in my paintings in this book. So this was in the back of my mind somehow. I probably saw it and it was part of my DNA. For example, if you look on this, so you see exactly the form and the pattern of the tires and how they tie to each other. And here you look on this, or those, you can see the grids, which I refer a lot. And you can see patterns which look very much like the keffiyeh or like the fence. For example, the two upper ones. And this was something that I just want to say that for me it was a big surprise, and I took it, and it's touched me a lot to find it, because I found the whole DNA of my works in this book. And sometimes, and I had a lecture in Cooper Union once, a few years ago. They invite me to the architecture department there. And so I started, and I say that my father was an architect, and he wanted very much that I will continue him. And I didn't want, I refused. I didn't want even to speak about it, and all the same as my brother. So nobody did it. And so he died, and the office, the studio closed. But anyway, why I refused to, why I had why I felt like this to architecture, because I said to them that my experience as kid was always that to be an architect is to fight with people. Because you're working for people, and all the time you fight with them. And I still remember that my father used to fight about this and with this. And my father he wasn't only architect, he was kind of artist. And he was very fanatic about aesthetic things. So he used to fight on every detail, and so all the time it was a conversation, fights about it. And I said to myself when I was a kid, I don't want to fight with people, I want to fight with myself. So I prefer to do it. So that's why I became an artist. And somehow it's interesting, because those group of works and the shows that I did in the museums all over the world, I did with Barry Schwabsky, who is very famous. He was here, I think. He's very famous art critic, and he writes a lot on painting. And he wrote an essay which called Painting Against Itself. And that's about my work. And he thinks that that idea is the middle, or the most important thing about my paintings in the new generation. So I just wanted to finish with this, and thank you very much.
First of all, I'm actually from Lebanon, and the lattices that you showed in the end, they're like the same as the ones that I've...
In Lebanon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just one question. I know the keffiyeh, especially the black and white pattern, is something that's, that Palestinians really, they consider it as it represents everything about their Arab identity. Yeah. do you get any? What are the Palestinian reaction to your kafia paintings? I'm like very curious.
Yeah, in Israel, you know, I have many Palestinian friends, and they're all so positive to those works. Always, I never heard anything else. By the way, I have so many Palestinian friends, and by the way, I used to teach in Haifa University. Mark speak about it until a year ago. And in the last years, I got about 60–70% was an Arabic students, more than Jewish, and in the class. And by the way, you hear all the time about conflict and about war and whatever, but maybe you hear much less about the places where there is a really nice dialogue. I mean, in my class on the art department there in Haifa University, it's like so harmonic, the relationships. I mean, I can't believe. And by the way, there are Jews, there are Arabic, Muslim Arabic, there are Christian Arabic, there are Druze, there are even Bedouins, so all kinds. There are more religious and less religious. And they are so friendly with each other. I'm speaking about the art department. I'm not saying that there are no conflict. There are many conflicts politically, but somehow you found both things in Israel, in any place, even in Yafo, even in Haifa. Haifa is mixed city. So they are life together. Usually the politics destroy everything. Yeah. I mean, I totally believe in it. For me, you know, on the personal level, I mean, I feel close to those people. We sometimes much more than to the Jewish Orthodox or whatever. I mean, no any comparison. About the kafia, the people that I know or visited my shows, they always were very, very positive. I had a friend he was maybe the most important Palestinian-Israeli artist. He died by cancer very young, Issam Abu Shakra. And he created, by the way, he used the symbol of the Jewish, like tzabar, how it's called. It's like a cactus, sabre, we call it, how you translate it? Sabra. It's very typical. It's very typical in Israel. So all his life, that was his main motive. And I created the kafia, and we even show together. And I knew him, and his girlfriend was a student. She was Jewish. It was very, very difficult those days because her family was against these relationships and whatever. And it was, so it's part of the life. I mean, it's very, very complex, the whole things. I'm not representing the Arabic people, and I never put myself in position to speak for them. I'm speaking for my position. I'm just relate to it because it's part of my life. And that's one element of my life that just exists all around. And by the way, the first organization, army organization in Israel in the 40s, in the 50s, was Agana, and people used to adapt the keffiyeh and to wear the keffiyeh. And this wasn't like, it was part of like friendship and kind of like relationship. I think that everything destroyed in the 67 war and in the occupation. I mean, the occupation destroyed everything. Of course, destroyed the Palestinian, but destroyed not less the Israeli society, to my opinion. I'm not here to speak politics, but to my opinion, is kind of like it's so bad. It's destroyed everything, include the cultural field and the art field and whatever, anything. It's like cancer in the Israeli society, because too dominant to sitting on the head of other people, no matter who is it. 50 years, it's like crazy. And because I was kid when it happened, so I still remember the days before. I was about 15 or 16 when the 67 war was. And so I still remember, I remember Israeli before, and I remember what's happened after. So I'm very, very critical about it. And it's very difficult, you know, it's very difficult to be in Israel. I mean, it's very complex. It's society which divide by, you know, on every level. If you take the Palestinian and the Israelis, and if you take even the Jewish society, like the Ashkenazic and the Sephardic, there is a big cultural fight right now, and between the religious people and the non-religious people. And I just had a dinner yesterday and with a couple of people, and they spoke to me about the Orthodox, the Israeli Orthodox, how they destroyed the whole relationships with the old Jews in America, you know, the Reformic and other. So we live in society that there are so many lines of conflicts, as same as dialogue. I didn't show you, but in the 80s, I created a group of works that shown immediately in Israel Museum in '84, and then it's taken to the ICA of Boston by David Ross, by the way. He curated this show. And the show was full paintings like a landscape, but with big words on it. And the words was all Arabic villages in Hebrew letters, like El-Fachem, or like Dir el-Assad, or like Jaffa, which is Jaffa. Jaffa is the Arabic name. Jaffa is in Hebrew, there is double connotations. It's like beautiful, or she is beautiful. So it's like, it's moved in between. The things about translation, about, you know, movement in between is very strong in Israel as in other places. And I'm not trying to judge, you know, I'm political, I accept in Israel, I accept as a political artist, but I think it's kind of mistake because I move, I mean that's the base, that's part of my work. It's very central part of my works, but I took it to different territory. I mean, I think now the works are more existential, are more psychological. I try to somehow to show what I feel about. And so what's mean to be frightening in unstable situation, in immigration, and that's very international. It's all over. I did my project in the Biennale, and I was surprised by how much it connects to other things that's shown in the central show or in other pavilions in terms of the issues. Because all the world now is falling apart. And the Middle East is terrible. You don't know who against who. I mean, it's like Western, what's going on in Syria and Iraq, in Lebanon, in other places, you know it. So you don't know who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. I mean, everybody is good and bad in the same time. You know, it depends of the point of view. I mean,
do you find a lot of collaborations between Arabic calligraphers and the Hebrew type or calligraphy?
The leaders?
No, Arabic calligraphy, and is there a lot of collaboration going on between?
No, not many. Not many. I did this collaboration. I met Herfoudi, this guy. He's a very nice guy. I met him. He lives in Akko. Akko is close to Haifa. He's inside Israel. And he's a very nice guy. He's also a singer and a dancer and whatever. And I invited him, and he was so thankful. And by the way, I did this show. It's kind of complex, but I did my installation aside of Jose Bedia, who is a Cuban artist who lives in Miami. And we became a friend. So we did 2 shows. It was a wall between us. And then I invited her fully to join me and to work with me. So he was another one. And he enjoyed it. And it was like experience because I don't ask him to work for me. I ask him, let's do something together. And he brought his things. There is, for example, there is a painting of a bird there. And in the head, I just raised it because I didn't succeed to paint it. And then he said to me, you know, Tsibi, there is in our culture, there is a story about birds who fly too high and his wings burned by the sun, so he fall down. So it's kind of Icarus story, the Arabic version. So I said to him, here, let's write it inside. So let's do it. So we create the bird together. I mean, it was amazing cooperation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do I need it?
No, you can speak in it. It just records.
First of all, I'm really excited being here. You know, it's been catching up. It's been a while since I became an expat, 1985. Glad to see you again after the short meeting at the opening. My question is regarding, I saw that I believe it's in the latest works that you are using nudes also. I saw some female nudes. Nudes. I saw female mainly, but I saw, I think, some male nudes also. And I wanted to ask about the content of it and how you go about it in painting, whether it's from a live model or your mind, and also what's how it connects to the work and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's, you know, yeah, I tried to say something about it before. I mean, it's, I brought back to my paintings after a year that I created, I related more to objects and patterns. I made a change in 2011-12, and I brought back the figure. Now, I show at the end how I did it in the 80s, and I show just 3 examples, but I had much more. And this was kind of, it's taken, at the beginning it was taken from like, by the way, in the catalog there is a very beautiful essay of John Yao. He referred a lot to those elements, and he said all the time that it's referred to kind of dirty drawings on the walls of restroom, you know, toilets or whatever. So it's kind of like, so it's kind of quotation of this. And he also, and I told it that it's also, he bring quotation, the way how Barry Schwabsky defined it, he said it's not representation, it's representation of representation. So it's about what's going on outside. It's not, so those figures doing many things, different things. So sometimes there are kind of like sexual relationships. By the way, it's very, the answer is very complex, but for me, in my history, you know, when I created the painting, those paintings with those elements in the 80s, I got a critique by maybe the most important Israeli poet who used to write a critique, Chezi Laskli. He died many years ago. So he said he created a connection between the politics and the pornography. And he said the pornography in the Middle East is, the politics in the Middle East is pornographic politics. And this connection, I think it's touch kind of true about how bleeding and how much is about domination you know, in Israel, even, you know, the domination or the kind of imperialist relation to everything around is part of our culture. I'm sorry to say it. I put something in the Facebook yesterday. So one of my friends said to me, "You are going to occupy New York." So I asked her, "Why to occupy New York? I mean, I'm just showing here. I don't want to occupy New York. It's not first take Berlin and then take New York like Leonard Cohen. You know, I'm not about this as a person, you know, but that's way how many people think. And when you live in Israel and you know a little bit what I'm talking about, I mean, the aggression is so high. And in the daily life, the aggression between people, the aggression on the roads, in the cars, any place, in the TV, you know, people shout one or each other. Nobody make conversation anymore. I mean, kind of like normal dialogue. People are fighting all the time. And I think that's the effect of the occupation. And I try to express it in my work. So that's one of the solutions. I mean, that's one of the, you know, things that sometimes you see. It's kind of brutal relationships. But it's just part of it. I must say that for me, it's very difficult to make the connection because we speak all the time on politics and about the images. But I want you to look on the way of painting because for me that's the most important thing. Because I ask myself, not really just what the images of the paint, because you know there is a separation between subject and object. You know, for example, the bird is object that I paint, is not necessarily the subject. The same as for Van Gogh when he painted his chair, it wasn't because he was interested in the furnitures. He represents kind of loneliness. So when he painted the tree, how it's called, the bush, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he represents something totally else. I mean, that's what was around. So for me, it's very important because the process how I work in the paintings is same as the installation is a little bit different because you have to plan from advance and you have to create many plans. The Biennale was terrible. I mean, I worked with architects and other people, and still I kept things to change in the place and to improvise. But in the paintings, I start with something and I don't know how the painting will finish. And I just start to create a dialogue and then and every day I come and I change the painting. I put it upside down. I take another canvas that I started 2 months ago and I put aside and then I put them together and continue together.